the worst way comes when it comes, but the work has to be done. And you get the idea, and then you use your craft and your talent to bring the vision given to you by the news. And I do believe that ideas come to you from without. You bring the ideas given to the news to the page by working every day, just like you're doing now. That's one question. Okay? The other question is, what about when you're between projects? And there's nothing wrong with taking some time off when you have nothing to say. It's nothing wrong with, with being still. There's nothing, the old joke that all writers have to explain to their wife, every writer has to explain to his wife or her spouse or her husband, has to explain that when you're sitting staring off into space, you're working. I mean, it's really tough. It is really tough for the spouses of writers to get this right, that when you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, that's part of your work. When you take a walk, that's part of your work. So there's nothing wrong with it being between projects and saying, okay, this is a day when I'm not going to do this. You don't want to let your discipline lag. And so on the days when, there's nothing wrong with journal writing, there's nothing wrong with writing things that you're not going to publish. On days when you're not going to go to work, there's nothing wrong with making sure you hit your hours and fill the time. But, for instance, after writing a novel, which is a very long project, I will take some time off. I'll stop and I'll just say, okay, let the brain recharge, let the ideas come back, let me think about things, let me look at things without figuring out how to describe them. There's nothing wrong with that either. So you're asking two different questions. You should be able to work without being inspired because you should be able to use the inspirations you've had working through. So that's one thing. You shouldn't be waiting around to be touched by lightning before you sit your butt down in the chair and go to work. But the second thing is you also shouldn't be afraid between projects to sit still and think. And sometimes, Raymond Chandler, who basically was the inspiration for my form of discipline, said that there should be a certain amount of time during the day. He recommended 4 hours, which is the way I lived for most of my life. So there's a certain time of the day when you don't do anything else except write. He said you can sit there, you just can't do anything else. And so sometimes not writing, but sitting still and thinking is an important part of the process. And I think you shouldn't be afraid to do that. I got to stop there. I'll be back again tomorrow. We'll talk more about what's happening with Bernie and Joe, what's his name, and more about the crisis we're in. I'm Andrew Clavin. This is The Andrew Clavin Show. The Andrew Clavin Show is produced by Robert Sterling and directed by Mike Joyner. Executive producer, Jeremy Boring. Technical producer, Austin Stevens. And our supervising producer is Mathis Glover. Assistant Director, Pavel Wydowski. Edited by Adam Sayevitz. Audio mixed by Robin Fenderson. Hair and makeup is by Jessela Olvera. Animations are by Cynthia Angulo. Production assistants, McKenna Waters and Ryan Love. The Andrew Clavin Show is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2020.
Our exalted experts want to hold us prisoner to coronavirus for another 18 months, while prosecutors dish out felony charges to formerly free Americans who have the gall to go outside for a walk. We will examine the junk science behind the most outrageous political power grab of our life.
Hey, I don't know if you heard, but we just had a big development in the unfolding Spygate investigation. It's just been revealed that the Justice Department's investigation of the FBI's actions against the Trump campaign in 2016 has evolved from an internal review into a criminal investigation. Wow, that is big, big news. With this new designation, U.S. Attorney John Durham, who is the official that William Barr assigned to this case, can now issue subpoenas, impanel a grand jury, compel witnesses to give testimony, and bring federal criminal charges. And this news comes on the heels of a report which said that John Durham was, quote, very interested in questioning the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, who is basically the nation's top spy chief, as well as former CIA director, John Brennan. So this is very significant news, as both Clapper and Brennan were two of the highest level intelligence officials during the Obama administration. And what's more interesting is that this came right after a trip by Durham and Barr to Rome, where they met with Italian intelligence officials as part of their investigation. And these are super significant developments, and they show that Durham and Barr's investigations have now reached the upper echelon of the intelligence agency's former leadership. And if you're looking for a roadmap for what has happened in Spygate thus far, as well as what might happen in the next few weeks, take a look at this. The Spygate infographic poster put out by the Epic Times. This thing is absolutely awesome. It took us 18 months of research to put together, and it details how federal agencies were politicized and weaponized at the very highest levels during the 2016 election. This is the real story of collusion that you won't be reading about in other media. And when we sent this to our subscribers, they were amazed, and they said that this was the most comprehensive view of Spygate that they had seen anywhere. And now you can get this poster delivered to your home, absolutely free of charge. You don't even need to pay the cost of shipping. Just click on that button below, and try the Epic Times newspaper for a month for just $1, and we'll send you this poster absolutely free of charge. That way, not only can you get real news delivered to your home every single week that doesn't push any false narratives, but you can hang this poster up, study it yourself, share it with your friends, your family, your neighbors, and your entire community, and learn the truth about the biggest political scandal in modern American history. Just click on that button below.
Our exalted experts want to hold us prisoner to coronavirus for another 18 months, while prosecutors dish out felony charges to formerly free Americans who have the goal to go outside for a walk. We will examine the junk science behind the most outrageous political power grab of our lifetime. Then, China infiltrates a White House investigation.
What'd you do besides long loops?
Funding to the World Health Organization.
I got
Joe Biden steps
some
up and addresses the
chicken
nation
breasts. I'm gonna
about
make
his
chicken
weakness
parm for dinner.
food.
Yay!
Some
I'm Michael Knowles, and this
cheese,
is the
and
Michael
lots of
Knowles Show.
cookies. You know, I had fun. But the lemon lips are not delicious.
Aww.
You might like them. I don't know.
I don't like sugary
They want to
things.
keep
Those
us
sugar things.
locked up forever.
Ah, craps.
That's it. Initially, it was 15 days to stop the spread. Then it was
I'm
another
shorter
2
sections,
weeks
dang
after
it.
that. So what? Another 30 days after that. So it's going to be 45 days total. Now they're saying maybe another month. Now they're saying maybe another month. And Zeke Emanuel, Ari Emanuel's brother, Rahm Emanuel's brother, one of the architects of Obamacare, says that we could be locked up for another 18 months while we wait for a vaccine for the coronavirus. You know, even the rosy numbers coming out of the White House, we hear from Larry Kudlow, he's saying it could be another 4 to 8 weeks. Very different than 15 days. 45 plus 8 weeks. That's a lot of time. But that's the rosiest number. Now we're hearing it could be as much as 18 months. Here is that Obamacare architect telling us why we've got to all hunker down for a year and a half.
I don't know.
Realistically, COVID-19 will be here for the next
I saw him
18
leaving, that's
months
it.
or more. We will
I saw
not
the
be able
box,
to
but I
return
never
to
saw a stack of
normalcy
mail.
I didn't
until
see
we
a second
find
mail
a
either.
vaccine or effective medications. I know that's dreadful news to hear. How are people supposed to find work if this goes on in some form for a year and a half? Is all that economic pain worth trying to stop COVID-19? The truth is, we have no choice. If we prematurely end that physical distancing and the other measures, keeping it at bay, deaths could skyrocket into the hundreds of thousands, if not a million. We cannot return to normal until there's a vaccine. Conferences, concerts, sporting events, religious services, dinner in a restaurant, none of that will resume until we find a vaccine, a treatment, or a cure.
Oh, is that so, Dr. Emanuel? Well, all right then, in that case, respectfully, how about you go stuff it, guy? All right, stop it. Stop telling us, based on faulty models, that we can't do anything that we want to do, and we've got to listen to you and do exactly what you say. If these guys had been right from the beginning, then they would have a lot of credibility. All right, I'm not saying that we have to be against quarantines per se. I'm not saying that we can't suffer economic hardship if there's an epidemic. The trouble is, these guys have been wrong from the very beginning, okay? And we cannot be shut down and locked up inside of our apartments under threat of prosecution for 18 months. Just can't happen. Why? For 4 reasons, as far as I can see. First of all, we cannot afford it. We were locked down for, 2 or 3 weeks? And in order to deal with that, the Congress had to pass the largest stimulus measure ever. we needed to come up with $6 trillion in relief. $2 trillion passed by Congress, another $4 trillion levered up by the Fed, just to get us
Did you
through.
intentionally play this thing, or is it something that just happened because you were
How
using it?
much money are we going to need to spend
It just
for
happened?
18 months? We
Yes.
could probably buy the Green New Deal 2 or 3 times if we were to get through all of that, which of course we cannot, because that's not how economies work. And we'll have a little more on that later on. Second reason that won't work, the models have.
Are you tired of the media spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? Well, take a look at this. Over the last 3 years, while the establishment media was pushing false narratives and uncorroborated evidence, we investigated and shed light on some of the deepest government corruption in this nation, something that makes Watergate look like nothing in comparison. And take a look at this. At a time when American corporations have been bowing to the Chinese communist regime, the Epoch Times has been exposing the atrocities that the communists have committed inside of China, as well as how they've gutted America's manufacturing base, sent over crate loads of poisonous synthetic drugs, and have forced Hollywood to censor the movies that you and I watch. And take a look at this. While the establishment media politicized their coverage of the border crisis, we send our team of reporters down to the border, and they've been wading through the Rio Grande River, going on ride-alongs with the sheriffs, interviewing the border crossers, and giving Americans an accurate understanding of the crisis at the southern border. And take a look at this. Our opinion section is awesome, especially at a time when both the establishment media and these giant tech conglomerates are censoring American public discourse. Our opinion section gives a platform to truly unique perspectives. So if you want to try an honest and wholesome newspaper that doesn't spin the truth and instead gives you the facts, click that button below and try the Epoch Times yourself for a full month for just a single $1. And not only will you get all these phenomenal feature sections, but take a look at this. While the establishment media have been pushing false narratives in their reporting of the current administration over the last 3 years, our team of reporters in the White House worked to give you an accurate picture of what the administration is doing. And take a look at this. While the mainstream media has been normalizing both socialism and communism, the Epoch Times has been investigating and exposing the subversion of America's schools, churches, media, and government by these 2 deadly ideologies. And better yet, your eyes will feel so good reading this newspaper because we just increased our font size by 20%, making the words easier to read and easier on your eyes. And take a look at this. While the establishment media is often critical of and even hostile to traditional values, we've given tradition center stage and have been sharing the accumulated wisdom, knowledge, and virtues that have been passed down in our cultures for thousands of years. And take a look at this. We have, in my opinion, some of the best puzzles in the country. Our team of puzzle masters creates 2 new pages of crosswords, word searches, sudokus, and so much more for every issue. They are phenomenal and will keep your mind fresh and active. And take a look at this. The Epoch Times' health section focuses on holistic health, how you can improve your physical, mental, and emotional well-being to achieve a truly vibrant state of health. And take a look at this. The Epoch Times' food section is phenomenal, and it gives you healthy recipes that don't just look good in pictures, but taste delicious in your home. And take a look at this. Not only can you read the news and features in print, but you'll also be able to read it on your tablet, smartphone, and your computer. Read it however you want. It's super convenient. So click on that button below and try the newspaper yourself for a full month for just a single $1. And not only will you get all of this phenomenal content, but we'll send you a very special gift. A giant investigative poster that took our reporters 18 months of research to put together, documenting how federal agencies were politicized and weaponized at the very highest levels during the 2016 election. This is the real story of collusion that you won't be reading about in the mainstream media. And this poster is truly a piece of history. So if you're looking for a newspaper that respects and honors America's traditional values, check out the Epoch Times. Click on that button below, try the paper yourself for a month for just a single $1, get your free poster, and stay truly and honestly informed. Just click on that button below.
PVP, polyethylene glycol, hooves, animal skin, sheep's wool, parabens, artificial colorants, talc, titanium dioxide, mineral oil, and shellac, which is a delicate way of saying beetle poop. Who makes this stuff? And who decided it was okay for women to consume any of it? It's a complete mess, based on outdated research from 50 years ago. Testing vitamins for women on men and rodents. Using caffeine to make you feel energetic. Riboflavin to make your pee turn bright yellow so you think it's working. And then pouring a ton of money into marketing, targeting women who are just trying to do the right thing for their bodies and have no idea they're being sold a product that could harm them. I met with companies that have been making vitamins forever and asked, do any of you even know where your ingredients come from? Nope. Do they have to smell like rotting fish? The more I learned about vitamins, the more I was filled with a sense of, oh, hell no. I was one step away from being a full-blown vitamin conspiracy theorist. The people making these products definitely didn't have our health in mind. Do we really need to take a vitamin? Turns out most women are lacking 9 essential nutrients. But common multivitamins typically have 20 to 40 unnecessary ingredients, often in forms we can't process, or such high dosages that our bodies become harmfully overloaded. We need vitamins. It's pretty, right? Smells good too. Minty. But most importantly, we only use those 9 essential nutrients women don't get enough of in their diet. We scour the world for the highest quality ingredients, and the best forms that all of our bodies can actually use, backed by clinical studies and research. D3 from wild harvested lichen, methylated folate from Italy, omega-3s from the same algae that NASA uses in space, from suppliers with the same mission, made by skeptics for skeptics, for label readers and conspiracy theorists, for Dr. Luke's wife and for me.
Have been wrong. And this point, I cannot harp on it enough. We were told time and time again, 2 million Americans are going to die, right? Or more than 2 million Americans, maybe, from coronavirus. We were told, even if we follow all the great measures and the social distancing and wear the masks, we're still looking at, what, 500,000? Few 100,000 at least, if not 500,000, if not 1 million. Those are the more modest estimates. How does that compare with reality? Right now, what we're being told is the peak of the virus. More Americans died from swine flu under Barack Obama than have died so far from the coronavirus. Now, look, that number is going to change. Even if we are peaking and we're on the downside of the slope, that's still a lot more misery to go through. But right now, today, at the peak, more people died from swine 09 than have died so far from COVID-19. So let's say the number right now is about 12,000, 13,000. Let's say the number gets up to 30,000, or 40,000, or 50,000, or 100,000. Those are numbers that are similar to the number of deaths we see each year from drug overdoses. And who knows how the drug overdose deaths are going to be affected by this. When there's economic collapse, guess what goes right through the roof? Drug overdose deaths and suicides. So the very people who sold us the bogus models are the ones telling us that we now need to remain locked up for a year and a half. Why else can't we handle this? 2 very important reasons. The last one is the one that nobody's talking about. We'll get to that in a second. First, I have got to thank our advertisers. You know, right now, little economic difficulty going on, and I know that a lot of people are having trouble in their businesses. That includes our advertisers. So I want to thank so much the advertising partners who are sticking around and not panicking in the economic turmoil. It really helps us so much. We really, really appreciate it. You know, we also appreciate it when our listeners go out and help those sponsors who keep us on the air. And one of my absolute favorite sponsors ever is Paint Your Life. You know, one thing I've been doing, and now that I've been at home a little bit more, is I've taken up painting. Turns out painting is much more difficult than it looks. Turns out I'm not a world-class artist, perhaps. Not yet, at least. But you know who are? The painters at Paint Your Life. And right now, you can get a wonderful painting made from I'll upload a photograph to a world-class artist, paint it for you. I got a beautiful oil painting. You can get that right now through Paint Your Life. And don't forget, Mother's Day is coming up. If you're looking for a way to feel connected to loved ones when you can't be near, then you've got to try paintyourlife.com. This service is so unbelievable. I got one for my stepbrother for his wedding. It's just absolutely gorgeous. I've recommended this to all of my friends. And now that I'm trying to be an amateur painter, I have even more respect for their wonderful artists. PaintYourLife.com, there's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded. You're working with them the whole time. That's guaranteed. Right now is a limited time offer. Get 20% off your painting. 20% off and free shipping. Text the word Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, to 64,000. That is Michael to 64,000. Text Michael to 64,000. Paint Your Life. Celebrate the moments that matter most. All right. So, first two reasons that we can't remain locked down for 18 months. We cannot afford it, and the models have been totally wrong. Third reason is we have medicines and treatments for coronavirus. Ezekiel Emanuel said we can't reopen until we have medicine and treatment for coronavirus. I think we do. We have multiple medicines that are in the works, probably most notably hydroxychloroquine, which the left, by the way, is still trying to cover up. We'll get to that in just a little bit because the New York Times is behaving even more egregiously than usual when it comes to this drug that has shown great promise at treating coronavirus. So, do we have a vaccine yet? No, but a vaccine could take 18 months. And until we have a vaccine, we have a drug that has been shown time and time again. So many doctors, we've played a number of them on this show, who say that that drug is working. So, we check that box, and yet this expert still wants to drag it on 18 months. The fourth and final and most important reason that we cannot lock down for 18 months more is that this is the most insane political power grab that we have seen in our lifetimes. Ever. Okay, you want a great example of this? I read this story yesterday out of Cincinnati. Hamilton County prosecutor Joe Dieters is now not only ordering people to stay at home, he's now saying that if you go out, go for a walk, violate your stay-at-home order, you will be arrested. You will be charged with a felony. You can, quote, sit your butt in jail. You can sit there and kill yourself. I don't care, but you're not going to kill my kids, and you're not going to kill my neighbor's kids. I'm done with this nonsense, so we'll see what happens. This lunatic, who, by the way, is wrong on the facts because the coronavirus has not been shown to infect children just about anywhere. So the safest people from coronavirus are children. Complete demagoguery on his part. But what he is saying is that if you, a free American, have the gall, the audacity to walk outside, you will be arrested, charged with a felony. You can sit in jail and kill yourself. Yeah, you can go sit in jail and kill yourself because otherwise you might kill people. Otherwise people might die. At the same time as government officials around the country are releasing violent criminals. In New York, in a jail, they released child rapists because they didn't want the jails to be overcrowded. This schmuck is arresting people, charging them with felonies, throwing them in jails for going for a walk. He says, I told the chief to charge him with felonious assault. I don't care. This is going to stop. I'm telling you, at least now the guy is going to stop. Now, he got even more specific because you think, okay, well, maybe people don't need to go to bars or clubs or things like that, not that they're open. But surely there's got to be some exception, right? There's got to be some exception for, say, you go to church, right? No, actually. Joe Dieters says, if I was the governor, I would tell these churches the first attendees at your church is going to be the National Guard because we are stopping this right now, okay? We're stopping it. No one is asking you not to pray to God. No one is asking you not to pray to Allah. No one is asking you not to pray. It can be done remotely. It's not a problem. But if it applies to these kids in Over the Rhine, it should apply to those churches too, and they need to just stop it. So first of all, just on a theological point, he's wrong. Okay, for certain denominations and certain religious groups, you can just do it at home. It doesn't matter if you go to church. For churches that recognize the sacraments, most notably the Catholic Church, but Protestant denominations too, you do have to go to church. You can't just do it from home forever. It does matter that you're in person. So a very ignorant statement. And not only is it ignorant of the religion, it's ignorant of our tradition of religious liberty and liberty generally in the United States. This lunatic has gotten drunk with power. Here are some examples. He had the police arrest Rashawn Davis, this guy who decided to walk outside. Had the police just arrest him, charge him with a felony. It's not just big talk with this guy, Joe Dieters. It's it's actually happening now too. And you know what's true? I looked up this guy, Joe Dieters. He's actually had a pretty good career. He's got mostly conservative political positions. He's been around a long time, right? It's not as though he's some deranged left-winger. What's so scary about this power grab is that it's corrupting even conservatives, even right-wingers. It's corrupting people in government because they are stealing absurd, unprecedented power in many cases. And something tells me they're not going to want to give it back quite so easily. The point is, this shutdown is not without consequence. Okay, there are many hidden costs to the quarantine, not just to our economy, but to our government. Not just to our government, but our way of life, to our politics, and not the least of all, to lives. There are consequences to lives of the quarantine. People will die because some demagogues and experts and politicians are trying to save people. Andy Cuomo in New York, he said, if everything we do saves just one life, it will have been worth it. Let's take a look at just one effect of this alarmism and this quarantine and this hysteria to see if it's worth it. This story takes place in Illinois. There's a man living with his girlfriend. The man is paranoid. He's afraid that his girlfriend has the coronavirus. So she gets tested for the coronavirus. She comes back. Before they get the test results, the man kills his girlfriend and kills himself. This is according to the sheriff's office in Will County, Illinois. Murder-suicide, because he was so afraid of getting the coronavirus. What are the circumstances of this? Was he afraid that she would give it to him? Was he afraid that they would both have it and die in misery? Was he completely ignorant of the statistics and the reality of this virus, maybe because it was so hyped up by demagogues in the media and in politics? Yeah, I don't know. All I know is we got two bodies now lying on the ground because of the alarms. So, look, I don't do this kind of utilitarian math, but Andy Cuomo apparently does. So, you got the one life that you've saved from the coronavirus. Now you got two body bags from the alarmists. How do you do that calculation? How do you make that? So if we saved one life, it was all worth it. Was it worth it? Does Andrew Cuomo still think that it was worth it? This is not just one random case in Illinois. I suppose it is a random case. It's not just a standalone. Because we know when there are economic downturns, suicide goes up. We know, as we said earlier, drug use. We know that people die in this situation. So was it worth it? By the way, we don't even really know how many people have died from the virus. Even the official count, we don't know. We'll get to why that is in a second, because Dr. Birx at the White House just confirmed that for us yesterday. First, I've got to thank our friends over at Quip. You know, when you're stuck at home, it's very easy to let certain basic habits like oral hygiene fall by the wayside. That is exactly why you need to go get a great toothbrush and stick to your healthy habits, okay? I have sworn by an electric toothbrush for years. You should too. Good habits mean brushing for 2 minutes twice a day, flossing regularly, no matter what brand you use. Quip makes that simple, starting with an electric toothbrush, refillable floss, and anti-cavity toothpaste. Quip's electric brush has sensitive sonic vibrations with a built-in timer and 30-second pulses to guide a full and even clean. Quip floss dispenser comes with pre-marked string to help you use just exactly enough. Plus, Quip delivers fresh brush heads, floss, and toothpaste refills to your door every 3 months with free shipping, so you don't forget your routine is always right. Join the 3 million healthy mouths and get Quip today, starting at $25. If you go to getquip.com/Michael right now, you'll get your first refill free. That is your first refill free at getquip.com/Michael. That is spelled getquip.com/MICHAEL. Quip, the Good Habits Company. So even if we were going to try to do this Andy Cuomo kind of math, where you save one life and it's all worth it, but what about if you lose one life on the other side? Even if we were going to do that, we don't know how many people have died from the coronavirus. That's according to Dr. Birx yesterday at the White House. We know that now because she told us that deaths from coronavirus are being recorded, in her words, in the most liberal way possible. So, in other words, if anybody dies with the coronavirus, then they are going to be recorded as dying from the coronavirus.
So I think in this country, we've taken a very liberal approach to mortality. And I think the reporting here has been pretty straightforward over the last 5 to 6 weeks. Prior to that, when there wasn't testing in January and February, that's a very different situation and unknown. There are other countries that if you had a pre-existing condition, and let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then have a heart or kidney problem, some countries are recording that as a heart issue or a kidney issue and not a COVID-19 death. Right now, we're still recording it, and the great thing about having forms that come in and a form that has the ability to mark it as COVID-19 infection, the intent is right now that if someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that as a COVID-19 death.
All right, this makes a huge difference. It might not seem like it does because you say, well, look, I'm sure the COVID-19 didn't help the condition, sure, but it makes a huge difference. According to the New York City data, 65.5% of New Yorkers who have died from coronavirus had at least one pre-existing condition. And these pre-existing conditions usually are pretty serious. Specifically, we're talking about diabetes, lung disease, cancer, immunodeficiency, heart disease, hypertension, asthma, kidney disease, and GI liver disease. They had at least one of them. Now, 65.5%, that's pretty high. Another 32.6% of New Yorkers who have died still have pre-existing conditions pending. We don't know whether or not they had pre-existing conditions. Do you know how many people who died of COVID-19 in New York were confirmed not to have pre-existing conditions? 1.9%. Just 1.9%. As of yesterday, that's 46 people. Look, that's still scary. If 46 people who were otherwise healthy dropped dead because of a pandemic that was started in China that came here and took us all by surprise, that's a scary number. But it's a very different number than if thousands of people in New York were dying from that, right? This is not to say that some lives are more valuable than others. This is not to say that we should throw the old and the frail off a cliff. What this tells us, though, is how virulent the disease is. And if the virulence of the disease matches what we're being told in it. If somebody with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, who does not have a good prognosis, who's got weeks, maybe a month or two to live, contracts coronavirus, who dies in the hospital, do we really believe that that death is caused primarily by the coronavirus? No, of course, nobody does. But because of the liberal way, to use Dr. Brooks's terms, that the deaths are being recorded, we will not know those numbers. So it will, if anything, inflate the numbers, and it could inflate the numbers of coronavirus deaths pretty significantly. Why are they doing it? Why record the deaths this way? We saw this kind of recording in Italy. We haven't seen it in a lot of other places. This method of recording the data gives a lot of cover to politicians, gives a lot of cover to alarmists who have shut down the global economy because 2 million Americans are going to die, and then now it looks pretty clear that 2 million Americans are not going to die. 1 million Americans are not going to die. The number could be significantly lower, an order of magnitude lower, or even more so. This method of recording seems to have a lot more to do with politics than it does with medical science. It seems to me that the more good news we get about this pandemic, the more the media wants to shut that up, the more hysterical the media wants to become, the more alarmist the media want to be to try to prove that they were right all along. Best example of this is the medicine that has been treating coronavirus. There are lots of different medicines out there that might be useful for coronavirus. There's a lot being tested right now. But the one that always comes to mind is hydroxychloroquine. That is the drug that was touted by medical doctors, by initially some in the media, by Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York, and by President Trump. Hydroxychloroquine has just been shown to be very effective, and the reason it's so helpful is because it's already been approved by the FDA for malaria. It's a drug that we have a lot of, it's cheap, we can produce quickly, and we know that it doesn't kill you because it's been safe to use for other diseases like malaria, like lupus, others as well. So the New York Times is curious about this because how are they going to raise the alarm bells? How is this going to be this massive, unprecedented, endless pandemic if we've got a medicine for it? So the New York Times is taking every shot they can. You know they've been going after him for hydroxychloroquine now for weeks. They've been trying to get him to shut up about this drug. So the headline yesterday, we have four New York Times reporters on this. Peter Baker, Katie Rogers, David Enrich, and Maggie Haberman, Hillary Clinton's favorite journalist. Headline is, Trump's aggressive advocacy of malaria drug for treating coronavirus divides medical community. Divides them, huh? Well, I think the doctors who want to help their patients don't seem divided on it. They seem to be prescribing the drug. I don't know, maybe they count themselves in the New York Times as part of the medical community. Maybe they count narrative doctors or doctors of narrative medicine, like the person who wrote the New York Times yesterday. Maybe that's who's divided on this. But the real doctors don't seem divided. So the article doesn't even spend too much time on the efficacy of the drug. The real political hit job in this essay is trying to suggest that President Trump has corrupt motives for promoting the drug. So they say some associates of Mr. Trump's have financial interests in the issue. Sanofi's largest shareholders include Fisher Asset Management, the investment company run by Ken Fisher, a major donor to Republicans, including Mr. Trump. A spokesman for Mr. Fisher declined to comment. So what's notable here is they've tried to tie hydroxychloroquine to Donald Trump, but they can't do it very well. So they say he's got a little bit of a stake in a company that has a stake in a company that has a stake in a company in hydroxychloroquine. So they realize their better attack is going to be to go after Trump's friends. So if Trump's friends have any investment in a company that invests in a company that invests in a company that ever once invested in hydroxychloroquine, then they're going to say this is corruption. As of last year, Mr. Trump reported that his three family trusts each had investments in a Dodge and Cox mutual fund, whose largest holding was in Sanofi. Sanofi is this company that I guess produces hydroxychloroquine. Except Ashley Coss, the Sanofi spokeswoman, said that the company no longer sells or distributes Plaquenil, which is the brand name of hydroxychloroquine, in the United States, although it does not sell it internationally. Or although it does sell it internationally. So they're saying, okay, so Trump has some investment in a mutual fund that invests in this company, Sanofi, which used to distribute a drug called Plaquenil, which is the brand name of hydroxychloroquine in the United States, but they don't distribute it anymore. So basically, it's total corruption, and he's just trying to fill his pocket. Then they go on, they say, several generic drug makers are gearing up to produce hydroxychloroquine pills, including Amneal Pharmaceutics, whose co-founder, Chirag Patel, is a member of Trump National Golf Course, Bedminster in New Jersey. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So they can't really, I mean, look, anybody who has a 401k invests in some company that invests in some company that maybe has some drug. You don't even know what's in your portfolio. So they know that that's not going to stick on Trump. So now they're saying that there are other companies that are working on this drug, which, by the way, undercuts their first argument, because the first argument is Trump's cornering the market, right? He's going to fill his pockets with this drug. If other companies are producing it, then he's not filling his pockets. But the other companies are producing it, and they're saying this is corrupt because one of the companies that's working on it has an investment by a company, by an investor, by a fund, and one of the people who invests in this is a member of one of the Trump golf clubs. If that is the best they've got, they need to just shut down the New York Times right now. Look at all these words. Look how long this article is. Oh my gosh, it's so long. To tell you that bombshell, that a member of one of Trump's golf clubs has an investment in a fund that invests in a company that isn't right now producing all the hydroxychloroquine, but maybe will eventually. And then I looked. This was even more fun. I looked to see how much money Trump had invested, because this thing was blowing up. Joe Scarborough tweeted about it. Seth Abramson at Newsweek tweeted about it. Kyle Griffin, MSNBC news producer, tweeted out this New York Times article. Aaron Rupar from Fox.com, serious investigative journalist, they're all tweeting about it. By the way, even George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's husband, who's a major Trump critic, even he admitted this was pretty weak. But you had all the hacks were tweeting about it. So I looked. I wanted to see how much money Trump had invested in hydroxychloroquine. Take a guess. Donald Trump, billionaire, very wealthy man, how much money do you think he invested in hydroxychloroquine if you look at the percentage of his investment in the fund and the company and the drug? So Trump's investment in the company that produces hydroxychloroquine, or that doesn't currently in the United States but used to, is at most $1,350. That's how he's getting rich. That's it. He's using a pandemic to promote a company that used to promote this drug, that used to produce this drug that's going to be used so that he can turn his $1,350 investment into a $2,000 investment. It gets better than that. Because we don't know exactly how much of the company he could own. That's the highest amount. At the lower end, the investment could be worth as little as $90. That's it. He's gonna use a global pandemic to bring his $90 investment up to $120. He's gonna make a cool $30, and then he's gonna treat everybody to ice cream afterwards at the White House. It's so pathetic. So that attack failed spectacularly from the New York Times. So when that failed, the press decided to attack him for possible negative health consequences from the medicine. And Trump did something very wise here. He didn't just go after the media on the facts. He went after the media on the narrative. And that's the thing we're all going to have to do if we don't want to keep ourselves locked up for the next 15 months. We'll get to that in a second. First, I have got to thank all of you Daily Wire members and All Access members. You know, if you haven't checked out the All Access live show over at dailywire.com, you're missing out. This is the new members-only program where I, Ben, Jeremy, Drew, Matt Walsh, where we all sit down on different nights and just kind of hang out. Turn the camera on. It's not even really a show. I think of it as just hanging out. It's like a conference call or a happy hour. I consider it a happy hour because often I'm drinking during the show. So definitely go check it out. It's very fun. And initially, this was just for our All Access Live members. There are All Access members. Now we're opening it up to all of our members during quarantine, which is probably going to bankrupt us if this quarantine goes on 18 months. So it's going live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at dailywire.com. Check it out. Head on over to dailywire.com. If you're not a member already, go to dailywire.com/subscribe. We'll be right back with a lot more. So when the media can't nail Trump for the corruption of investing $90 in hydroxychloroquine, they are going after the health effects of hydroxychloroquine itself. So at Trump's daily press briefing, where he's his own press secretary, they asked him about this yesterday, about the side effects, about how we shouldn't be so quick to administer this drug to dying patients. Here is the report.
With millions of pills of hydroxychloroquine donated, is there a plan or system in place to track the potential side effects?
When you saw the representative,
Serious harm. So is there a plan to track the side effects?
The side effects are the least of it. You have people dying all over the place.
So you know that this is already going to be some unfair questioning because she gets the question out, hey, are you guys tracking the side effects of this drug? And then President Trump starts to answer and she keeps interrupting. And the side effects, and the side effects, and there are going to be all these side effects. Because they're so upset, they're so crestfallen that the drug is working. They're so upset that people are getting better. Because then it can't be Trump's fault, and Trump can't be responsible for killing 1 million people. Drats! They were sure they were going to get him this time. The Russia thing didn't work, and the taxes didn't work, and the Ukraine thing, remember that? They impeached him over Ukraine and a phone call, that didn't work. But they're going to get him. He's going to kill 1 million people, then we'll really get him. Drats, foiled again because he's promoting a drug that's working. So now all they've got left is to say, so what about the side effects? And President Trump gives what I think is the perfect answer to it. He gives the answer not merely scientific and medical terms, but
A woman last night, I watched her on one of the shows, good show, Laura, and she thought she was dead. was a representative from Michigan. She was just in horrible shape for 12 days, 14 days. She thought she was dead. I think she said that her doctor said she's, it's going to be very tough. She saw me talking about this, and she asked her husband to go to the drugstore. Now, this is a Democrat representative, a person that, perhaps wouldn't be voting for me. I think she'll be voting for me now, even if she's a Democrat, even if she's a Democrat representative. He gave it to her. Now, it's I don't say it works like this at all. 4 hours later, she awoke, and she said, I feel better. And then shortly thereafter, she felt great. This is a woman that thought she was going to die. Her manner of speaking, the way she told the story was beautiful. I asked my husband to go and get it. He got it. She is now okay.
So he goes on, but I think you get the point. President Trump is flipping the left's narrative on it. The left's narrative this whole time, from Andy Cuomo to Zeke Emanuel to the experts to the media to the politicians, if you oppose them, you want people to die. That's what they're saying. If you even so much as question what they're doing, you want people to die. You oppose shutting down the global economy, you want people to die. If you oppose arresting people for leaving their homes, you want people to die. Now they've gone even further. They say if you support giving people access to the medicine that will save their lives, you want people to die because of hypothetical side effects or something that don't even exist. And New York Times, right, just yesterday was talking about how if you support giving people this medicine, you want other people to die because there is a hypothetical shortage of the medicine for people who have lupus, even though there's no evidence of that shortage at all. None of that is true, but that is the narrative they're pushing out. So Donald Trump, master of narrative, flips the narrative on its head. He says, if you oppose giving people this drug, then you want people to die. And he picked probably the perfect character to destroy the left-wing's narrative here, because we're talking about a Democratic politician. This is a Democratic representative who was on death's door and then takes the drug and now is all better. Not just a Democratic representative, a woman. Not just a Democratic woman, a Democratic black woman. I mean, it checks every intersectional box that the left talks about all the time with identity politics. And now Trump is saying, if you oppose giving people this medicine, you want a black, female, Democratic politician to die. And I won't let that happen, not on my watch. This is the right attitude. This is how we've got to start speaking. We like to play by all the proper rules. Marquess of Queensberry rules. Totally fair, above board, no punches below the belt. The left punches below the belt. The left demagogues. The left emotionally manipulates. Now, we should be better than the left, but we've got to be able to counter their narratives as well. Trump showed us a great way how to do that. He was pretty brutal in this press briefing all around. This is one of the hallmarks of it. You see these motifs coming back in all the press briefings. They'll talk about the cure, the drug, and giving people some hope. They'll talk about how serious it is, so we can't just reopen tomorrow. He'll then humiliate one reporter. He humiliates one reporter every single day. And yesterday, that reporter was a young man who asked about how this is all affecting the price of oil and what our energy response is going to be to this. So the kid barely gets his question out before President Trump corners him and asks him a simple question, a question, unfortunately, that he couldn't answer. What's the price of oil?
I just checking on oil again today. I was wondering if...
Oil?
Yeah.
Where is it today?
I was wondering if you...
No, where's the press? Give me the press.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
How can you ask a question when you don't know the press?
I'll look it up for you.
Okay, let me do somebody else. Go ahead.
Oh, that's so brutal. That is so humiliating. I don't know who that reporter is. He might be a perfectly nice guy. He might have just been having a bad day and he made the unlucky mistake of not preparing for that one part of the question. Trump has got to keep this up. This was great. Because, look, I don't want to be unfair to this reporter. He might have just not looked up the number beforehand. He should have known. If he says, I was just checking on oil and I want to ask you about oil, Trump said, okay, well, what's the price? It's pretty important information if you want me to give you my answer on oil. And he says, oh, I don't know. He's got to keep the reporters on their toes. First, it puts the reporters on the defensive, and it discourages unfair questions. If the reporters know that he's going to grill them, then they're not going to be so loose with their questions. You know, it's actually the same justification that we have for having the reporters in the first place. We have reporters ask tough questions so that we keep the politicians on their toes. But the politicians need to be tough too, otherwise the reporters are going to take advantage. That's the first reason. Second reason is it shows to everybody out here that contrary to the media narrative, President Trump actually knows a lot more about what's going on than all these media people who are condescending to him, who are criticizing him, and who are mocking him. What this shows, when it's just him and the reporters, unvarnished, live TV, it shows that Trump knows a lot more than our self-appointed elites in the mainstream media do. You don't get that when you just watch pre-recorded left-wing cable news. You don't get that when you just read the New York Times. But live, unvarnished on TV, you do see that. And it's why it's important for Donald Trump to humiliate these reporters on occasion. He's got to do it fairly, and this was a fair way to do it. But the press comes out there every day and tries to unfairly humiliate Trump. And so Trump's got to give it back to them, and then the people can decide. There was some news that came out of the briefing yesterday beyond Dr. Birx, who said that we're going to be recording these deaths in a way that's going to compromise our data, beyond these other questions that came up. The most important news that President Trump wrote is that the United States is planning on defunding the World Health Organization.
The WHO, that's the World Health Organization, receives vast amounts of money from the United States, and we pay for a majority, biggest portion of their money. And they actually criticized and disagreed with my travel ban at the time I did it. And they were wrong. They've been wrong about a lot of things. And they had a lot of information early, and they didn't want to. They seem to be very China-centric. And we have to look into that. So we're going to look into it. We give a majority of the money that they get. They called it wrong. They called it wrong. They missed the call. They could have called it months earlier. They would have known. And they should have known. And they probably did know. So we'll be looking into that very carefully. And we're going to put a hold on money spent to the WHO. We're going to put a very powerful hold on it, and we're going to see.
Love that. Great idea. Should have done it a long time ago. The World Health Organization, the WHO, is a mouthpiece for the Chinese Communist government, and has been for some time. I mean, this is not a conspiracy. This is you can look exactly to the dates when they appointed their own lackey to run the WHO. The guy who runs the WHO is a politician. It's a communist politician that was specifically requested by the Chinese government, and as payback for that, this guy has been carrying water for them, totally ignored the warning signs of the pandemic, didn't even send experts over there until February, despite the outbreak happening in China possibly as early as October, and who knows, we might find out it was even earlier than that. The WHO, actually the most intense, passionate campaign they've waged during this whole pandemic was to get President Trump and other people to stop calling it the Chinese coronavirus, because they wanted to hide China's culpability in all of this. An egregious organization that has not only failed, but has really carried propaganda for some of the worst people on earth, and they shouldn't get a penny of our money. Speaking of China, China infiltrated a White House press briefing. A reporter, this was not yesterday's briefing, but the day before, a reporter kept pestering Trump with questions about China and all the good that China's doing, how China's helping out, and why won't he keep working with China. And so President Trump just flat out asked this person, said, what outlet are you with? Are you with an outlet that is with the Chinese government? And Trump was absolutely pilloried for this in the mainstream media as a racist, as a xenophobe, as a bigot, all the usual stuff. Here's the exchange.
I hope they're going to honor the deal. We'll find
With
out.
China, are you cooperating with
I don't
China?
know. Who are you working for? China? You work for China, or are you with a newspaper? Who are you with?
Hong Kong Phoenix TV.
Who owns that? China? Is it owned by
based in
China?
Hong Kong.
No, is it owned by the state?
No, it's not. It's a private owned company.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, good. And you hear in Trump's voice he doesn't quite believe it. So the press, they say, how racist. Just because this woman looks Chinese and sounds Chinese, you're asking if she's working for the Chinese government? Of course, that's not why he was asking. He was asking because it sure sounded like she was asking questions that were nice to China. Right? I don't think he was doing it because of how she looked or sounded. I think he was doing it, not primarily at least, I think he was doing it primarily because she was asking questions that any Chinese propagandist would ask. So then she says, no, I'm with an independent outlet, the Phoenix. So, and you Google that outlet, and it turns out she lied. Actually, she is working for the Chinese government. Actually, the Chinese government owns a lot of that news operation. And it turns out Donald Trump was totally right. And he was right to ask the question, he was right in his suspicion. And a Chinese propagandist infiltrated the White House press briefing, which, look, these things happen. All right, governments do use the press. Subversive left-wing governments use the press. I mean, our own subversive left-wing politicians use the press here, even here in the United States. So this kind of thing happens before. Trump was right about this. This is something we've got to watch. And the knee-jerk reaction to say that everything Trump does is wrong and bigoted and terrible, even for members of our own press, is a pretty egregious thing in the face of a pandemic that was caused by the Chinese government. And yet they're defending Chinese propagandists in the briefing room. So President Trump talked about a few other things in these briefings. He mentioned yesterday that he spoke to Joe Biden. And one thing I really liked about this is Joe Biden wanted to have a phone call with Trump. And I said on the show a few days ago, I'd like to have Trump handle it. He said, okay, I'll have a phone call. It wasn't, I can't talk to him. What can he offer me? It wasn't hostile. It wasn't, he was very gracious about it. He said, yeah, I'll take a phone call. Then they had the phone call. He was asked how the phone call was. He said, yeah, it was fine. It was nice. Had a nice call for about 15 minutes. That was it. Brushes it off and moves on. It keeps him so elevated. And it keeps Joe looking so small. Because we were all wondering, what's Joe going to offer on this phone call? Joe can't remember his own name. What's he going to do? He's going to solve the pandemic that Trump is already doing a pretty good job of solving. And so I think Trump intuited that too. He said, okay, what do you got, Joe? Joe had nothing. The call was absolutely nothing. Actually, we just found out what Joe's got. Because, well, Trump is solving this unprecedented global pandemic, or certainly unprecedented in recent memory. I guess the Spanish flu was pretty bad too, but you're not allowed to compare this to the flu anyway, so let's call it unprecedented. Well, while President Trump is doing that, Joe Biden is quarantined at home, forgetting his own name, and putting out podcasts. It's the only medium that he can work in, right? It's a medium where he can have his voice sped up, he can be edited. I think they've slowed down the edit since I pointed out how ridiculous it sounded, so I'll take a little bit of credit for that. But they've slowed it down just a little bit, but they can clean him up. They can take out all the weird stuff. And yet, the best that Joe Biden can muster, this is the actual trailer put out by the Biden campaign, the best he can muster in this time of crisis, is to talk about how much he loves Fig Newton cookies.
Are Fig Newtons your favorite snack?
Well, they're among the favorite. You know why? They're small and I can sneak them. You can buy little packs of them, and I get them on the planes when I fly back and forth. But the thing that everybody makes fun of me, that when in doubt, I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But I learned everybody was making fun of that, and I found out John Kerry has the same addiction: peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Peanut butter jelly sandwich is always good. But my daughter and I enjoyed it when you were in Michigan, and you shared your Fig Newtons with us.
Oh, that's right. I had some of that. I remember that. Yeah, I always have little packs of them with me.
This is riveting stuff. I'm sorry. I'm just on the edge of my seat right now. I don't even know how I can go on with the show after that bombshell that Joe Biden likes not only Fig Newton cookies, but also peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I didn't clip that out. That's the trailer that the Biden campaign used. That's their best stuff. I don't think that we want that guy to become the president. I don't think that we want to give that guy a lot of power. I don't think that we need to tolerate the largest political power grab in our lifetimes if the man who's going to wield that power barely knows what planet he's on, and the most important and incisive commentary he can muster is his favorite cookie. Not a good place to be. Fortunately, President Trump is doing a good job. I hope he continues to do a good job and pushes that timeline of reopening up, not at the absolutely unacceptable 18 months, but even closer, not 8 weeks, not even 4 weeks. We need to get this thing going again. We've seen a lot of promise on the medical front, on the modeling front, as those alarmist models have fallen apart. We need to get moving. It's time to do that. We can weather this storm. The president might even come out of this looking better. But at time is running out. We don't want to be in a situation where we're stuck with President Biden. Okay, that's our show. I'm Michael Knowles. It's the Michael Knowles Show. Got a lot more. We'll do it all tomorrow. See you then. The Michael Knowles Show is produced by Ben Davies and directed by Mike Joyner. Executive producer, Jeremy Borg. Supervising producers, Mathis Glover and Robert Sterling. Technical producer, Austin Stevens. Assistant director, Pavel Wadowski. Editor and associate producer, Danny D'Amico. Audio mixer, Robin Fitch. Hair and makeup, Nika Geneva. Production assistant, Ryan Luck. The Michael Knowles Show is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2020.
If you prefer facts over feelings, aren't offended by the brutal truth, and you can still laugh at the insanity filling our national news cycle, well, tune in to The Ben Shapiro Show. We'll get a whole lot of that and much more. See you there.
The Chinese Communist regime is killing people and harvesting their organs. Although most media have remained almost completely silent on this issue over the last decade, there's been mounting evidence that the Chinese Communist Party's transplant system is completely unethical, and honestly, it's evil. Since 1999, the number of transplants in China just took off. China went from having 150 transplant centers in 1999 to over 714 of them today. But what's beyond belief is where these organs are coming from. The Epoch Times has been doing deep investigations, and what they've reported on is truly shocking. They've had hospitals advertise online that they could guarantee patients' organs within the time frame of weeks, and that they could even schedule operations in advance. To put that in perspective, here in the U.S., the waiting time for a kidney is 5 years, but in China, you can get it next month. And for these Chinese hospitals, it's an extremely profitable business, as their websites show that they're charging $30,000 for corneas, $60,000 for kidneys, and $150,000 for hearts. Just imagine what a single person is worth. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you might think that it makes sense because China is a big country and they must have a lot of organ donors, right? This is where it gets really scary. The Chinese newspaper, Beijing Today, reported in 2011 that the Beijing Red Cross said that over the past 20 years, only 37 people nationwide registered to be organ donors. 37 people in all of China. So where are these organs coming from? Well, in 2010, China's Vice Minister of Health admitted that over 90% of these organs come from executed prisoners. But that doesn't make any sense. China executes an estimated 8,000 prisoners a year, which is far, far less than the 60,000 transplants that they do every year. So where are these organs really coming from? Researchers have concluded that China is killing, harvesting organs from prisoners and conscience. Practitioners of Falun Gong, in particular, are believed to be the main sources. Our reporters have spoken to practitioners of this meditation discipline who escaped China, and they told us that while they were being tortured in prisons, they would also be subjected to blood tests, urine tests. So what this means is that if you go to China today for an organ, an innocent person will likely be killed to supply it to you. This is why real news and honest journalism is so vital to our country. Without knowing the truth, how can we do the right thing? That's why you should try The Epoch Times. We've been following the story of forced live organ harvesting over the last 14 years, among many other stories that you won't be reading about in the mainstream press. Click that button below and try the paper yourself for a full month for just $1 and experience real, honest journalism that's based in traditional values. Just click that button below, try it for yourself, you'll absolutely love it. Just click that button below.
You're looking to tone up or burn belly fat, then listen in. Because look, I've helped over 400,000 people get into the best shape of their life. But if I'm going to help you too, then I need to break this down and start at the very beginning. Okay, quick exercise. Place your hands on your stomach right now. Come on. Grab the belly fat. Now, how long have you been struggling with everything that's in your hands right now? And why haven't you taken care of this before? Mainstream media has led us to believe that more cardio, less calories, and more supplements and heavier weights is the answer to all our prayers. But if you've tried this method, there's a 100% chance, not 80, not 90, not 99, 100% chance that you wish you were in better shape right now. And that's what I'm on a mission to fix. You just can't seem to lose weight yet. Your friend Jenny, who doesn't work out at all and eats whatever she wants, stays in amazing shape all the time. Now, before you say it's just genetics, you're wrong. It actually comes down to one simple yet complex process that is backed by over 100 studies from some of the most prestigious universities in the world and works for anyone, whether you have 5 pounds to lose or 150 pounds to lose. If you're doing the right kind of diet, you can use those dinners out when you're having a steak, you're having potatoes, you're having whatever you want, and you can use those meals to actually speed up your metabolism and look better the next day when you wake up versus waking up and feeling bad about yourself. Again, there are some foods that have an insanely high thermic effect, while some foods have none. A thermic effect is just a fancy way of saying it burns calories when you eat it. And most people don't take advantage of this and don't realize it's one of the most powerful weight loss weapons out there. And what's great is you can literally do this today with very little effort and get a massive effect from it. So hit that link below or above and watch the video and start adding this to today and enjoy it. So click the link. Hurry up.
As good news starts to come in, Americans ask what it will take to start to reopen. President Trump targets WHO and the staffing chaos in the administration continues. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. The Ben Shapiro Show is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Your online activity should not be public. Protect yourself right now at expressvpn.com/Ben. Before we get to anything else, you may have noticed the market a little bit volatile over the past few weeks. You noticed that a little bit? Well, maybe it would have been a good idea like a few weeks ago to have diversified into precious metals at least a little bit. Well, the same thing remains true today. In a world of volatility where you can't know what's happening next, it's not a bad idea to be diversified into at least something that has a solid value to it. Right now, you shouldn't be relying just on the market. Call Birch Gold and convert your traditional IRA or 401k into a precious metals IRA if that is something you are interested in doing. If you've not yet taken the first step of requesting a free information kit on gold, you should know this is not a particularly complicated process. Birch Gold will go to work making simple for you. They will answer all of your questions. They will have a conversation with you, and you can determine if precious metals make sense for you. There is no obligation. You have nothing to lose to take that first step. Birch Gold Group has thousands of satisfied customers, countless 5-star reviews, and A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Again, if you had had some precious metals in your portfolio over the last few weeks, you would have been a lot better off. It's one of the reasons why I suggest that everybody diversify at least a little bit into precious metals. Don't wait until the market drops again to protect your hard-earned savings. Text Ben to 474747. See how simple and straightforward the move can be for you. Again, that's Ben, my name, to 474747, and go check out my friends over at Birch Gold. Alrighty, so we have some actual good news this morning. We have some bad news in the sense that there is always a trailing indicator of where we are on this virus, and that is the death count. The death count in New York was very high last night. The death count overall in the United States was very high yesterday, but that is because we're moving quickly toward the peak. So the death count tends to lag the actual number of infections that have been identified by a significant amount of time, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. Last night we saw over 1,800 Americans dead over the course of the last day, which is a big number. I mean, it's definitely a big number. Normally in America, about 7,500 Americans die in a given day. So add to that 1,800 Americans, although deaths from other causes is down fairly significantly because everybody is staying in, so nobody's dying in car crashes, for example. Overall, right now, the United States has suffered around 13,000 deaths, and virtually all of those accrued in the last 2 weeks. We have well over 400,000 cases. The majority of the cases that have been identified, or at least the vast plurality of the cases that have been identified in New York. 142,000 cases identified in New York, over 5,000 deaths in New York, approaching 6,000 deaths in New York. So New York is indeed the epicenter of all this, followed by New Jersey. What's been kind of amazing is to look at the contrast between, say, New York and New Jersey and California, another highly populous state, which to date has still seen under 500 deaths in the state of California. And the lockdown orders that went into place in California went down 3-4 days earlier than the lockdown orders that went into place in New York, maybe a week earlier on the ferry outside in places like San Francisco. with all of that said, the big factor here is that not only did California lock down very quickly, California also is much more spacious. People are out in suburbia. People are not on top of each other the same way they are in areas with public transportation networks that are used in enormous fashion. It's why you are seeing big upticks in Detroit. Basically, population density is a fairly good indicator that you are going to get a fairly large wave because people are infecting each other. Meanwhile, over in the UK, Boris Johnson remains in intensive care for the second straight day. He apparently is not on ventilators. He apparently is on some sort of supplemental oxygen. Johnson is in stable condition. He is breathing without the help of a ventilator, according to a government spokesperson. 55-year-old
Years ago, our staff of reporters and editors inside of China were arrested, jailed, and tortured for reporting the truth. This forced us to develop a system and an underground network of sources for getting real news out of that country. And because of that, amidst this crisis happening right now, our team is able to report the real situation. Among other things, they've been contacting individual funeral homes and hospitals in order to get a more accurate picture of what's really happening on the ground. And we report it all without politicizing the situation. Instead, we present you with the facts, the figures, the numbers, the context, and the analysis so that you can make up your own mind, form your own opinion, and keep yourself and your family safe. So click that button below and try the paper yourself for a full month for just $1. We deliver to all 50 states. We've got reporters around the globe, around the U.S., as well as inside of the White House, giving you an accurate picture of what's happening today. So click that button below and try the Epic Times yourself. It's pure American journalism that's based in traditional values. And it can be delivered to your doorstep every single week, and the digital content you can access anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So keep yourself informed and stay safe.
Receiving oxygen, so that is the latest on Boris Johnson. Now, I said there was some good news, and in fact, there is some very, very good news. Like, a lot of good news, actually, today. I mean, as good as the news can be in the middle of a global pandemic. But the news is good. So, you remember that IMHE model that I've been talking about all week long? I've been talking about the modeling and how uncertain the modeling is, and what that means for how we get out of this. And we're going to get to what all of the new data means for how we get out of this, how we reopen the economy and go back to some form of life in just a few minutes. But the IMHE model has been downgraded again. So over the course of the last 5 days, the IMHE model from University of Washington, which is a curve-fitting model, meaning what they do is they look at all the data coming in from different areas, and then they try and draw a curve to fit the curves that they're seeing in other areas. So as more data comes in, then they are changing their curve to fit the data that is coming in. Originally, they were relying on Wuhan data, and they were relying on Italy data, and it turns out that that data was outlying data or not properly reported in the case of China. And so they were really overestimating what the peak would be, it looks like. They were also really underestimating how fast the peak would arrive, because it looks as though it's taking a while for things to build to a peak, because it did take a while in Italy, but that's because their hospital resource use was completely overwhelmed. So they have now downgraded the model again, the IMHE University of Washington model. So remember, they'd suggested anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000 deaths by the beginning of August. Well, now they are suggesting that the total number of deaths in the United States, which they've pegged at like 93,000 as of last Friday, and then they downgraded that to 82,000 on Monday. They've now dropped it dramatically again. That has now dropped to 60,415. So it has dropped by fully 1/3 since Friday, and that is because the new data is coming in. Now, again, they were already gearing for everybody locked down. That was one of the actual provisions of their study. The study was done with the assumption that everyone was going to lock down through the end of May. Now, is everybody going to lock down through the end of May? I don't know. I think that's pretty highly unlikely, considering that we are only at the beginning of April. Like, going for another 6 weeks on this thing seems rather uncertain. But with that said, the question is, why the variability in their own model? Right? Why did the curve change so much? So either they underestimated the impact of people locking down, meaning that people locking down really spread the transmission rates, and it's a factor of the transmission rates, not the death rate. Meaning that there are only a few factors here.
Is the Chinese Communist Party lying about the coronavirus?
Turn the power off, back
Our
on.
staff has been breaking stories by making undercover phone calls into China, including into hospitals and funeral homes. in order to get real news directly from the mouths of the people involved in these stories. We've broken many stories, including one showing that the current death toll is much higher than reported by the official Chinese media. Facts that show the picture that is now being shown to the world by China is inaccurate. The Epoch Times was started by Chinese Americans living in the United States who themselves had seen how the Chinese Communist Party manipulates information
That is so
and
cute.
uses disinformation to control narratives.
It's like, I'm just waiting for
While
it
we
to
are now
be
in global media, we were originally started because our founders saw a need for an honest media for those living under communist repression and censorship in China.
It's
But
not
this
my
came at a big cost. Nearly all of our staff in China were
Oh, these are my this first thing.
and because we speak honestly about the Chinese Communist Party, we are blacklisted from China. But despite not being in China, we have an edge. We have no censorship when it comes to covering China. We've become a trusted source of news on China because we won't sacrifice our honesty. In covering the ongoing coronavirus outbreak, our journalists are able to reach contacts in China, get real news, without any thought of how the CCP is going to respond to it. We are not afraid of being blocked. We are already blocked. We are not afraid of losing our visas in China because we already have no visas. We have no reason to fear reporting the truth when it comes to China.
She walked in with way
Since our
less hair
only
than she walked out.
allegiance is
And
to
I
our
got
readers, we're able to report
It looks
information.
good.
It's a little
hard.
messed up here, and
Give
it's
the
a little
Epoch
hard.
Times
It
to
looks
try
good.
for just $1
Because it's
per
uniform, so
person.
it's meant to have like
Deliver to
that.
all 50
I was
states.
gonna say, if you pull all the hair, it's supposed to like do that, like a
Experience
mohawk.
fearless journalism that's based in
Really?
traditional
Yeah.
values.
Can I see?
Click the link
Let
below
me.
and get the Epoch Times.
Can't use this one though. Sid! Oh, sorry. There's chemicals in it. Yeah, that's why I ran. I'm so sorry. You just barely got me. I heard the spray and I went, no! Hand me the comb. Give me that comb. Give me that comb. Give me that comb. This is when you threaten me with scissors.
Yes.
Don't make me wave a sharp pointy object at you.
You can stay, please stay.
I'm just walking over here so I can wipe the hair off my feet.
Put shoes on.
Here's the thing, I can't go back upstairs because I was recording upstairs. Dad's now bumbling in the bathroom, and you'd be able to hear it in my recording. So like, you know, it's not like I have a time limit. You know, you know what I could be doing instead of trying to record shit? I could be trying to do school, but like, you know, no, I'm not gonna do that.
Hang out with me, cause I'm cool. I'm cool cat.
Cool cat saves the kids.
Yeah, cool cats and kids.
You've not seen Cool Cat Saves the Kids, have you? You need to find a movie review for Cool Cat Saves the Kids. I Hate Everything did one. That's a kitty. Oh, it's adorable to look over here to see kitties.
Yes.
Hey, Odie. Hi. Can you hear him scream at you?
Yep.
Aww.
Occasionally, when it's quiet.
He's sitting at the door.
Hey, stay with me.
Someone texted you.
Yep.
People die because you've infected a lot of people, even if the death rate is the same as, for example, the flu. So that is one possibility. Another possibility is that the death rates themselves were overestimated, meaning that the transmission rate was the transmission rate was not as high as previously thought, but they thought that more people were dying of it than were actually dying of it. And then the third possibility is they thought that if people stayed home, then they would still be going out and meeting other people. But they didn't change that fact. So what that really suggests is that either this thing is not quite as transmissible as they had originally supposed, or the death rate, based on actual case numbers, is not as high as previously supposed. And these questions are really vital. It is really important to know the answers to these questions, because until we know the answers to these questions, we're not going to know how to roll out a recovery plan. We're not going to know, should we let tons of people out? Because what if a huge percentage of the population has already had this thing? What if 30% of the population has already had this thing? Right? As we are seeing in New York City, as the number of tests goes up, so does the number of positives. We've actually seen something like a 45, 46% positive rate for people who are coming in for coronavirus tests in New York. Now, again, that's self-selected. Right? It's not randomly selected. Those are people who are coming in with symptoms.
Problem.
What kind of
that does
problem?
suggest a wide and broad spread of this thing.
Okay. Right here it says, fun fact about llamas. Guard llamas protect sheep from predators such as coyotes. You want to know what's plastered all over the dang box and saying, help find all the coyotes. This guard llama is doing a horrible job.
Where are the coyotes?
There's 6 coyotes hiding on this box in the sheep herd. Someone is slacking on the job.
Please stay with me.
Okay, so they have also downgraded the number of deaths per day in terms of the peak. So, like 3 days ago, they were suggesting that the peak was going to happen, I believe, April 15th, and they had suggested over 3,000 deaths, like 3,300 deaths per day. Instead, they're now projecting that the highest day of death is going to be on April 12th, and will be 2,200
I have
deaths,
sharp implements.
which
Don't make
is
me
a
use them.
lot lower, like a lot lower. And then it will quickly drop off to the point where we are experiencing double-digit
After
deaths.
the loop, I'm going to grab it.
This model holds,
Okay.
which
Can't
again,
I'm gonna
they're
give it to the
dropping
birds.
consistently. So we hope that they continue to drop it. If this model to be the one that actually holds, if this
Well,
were
that's got
accurate,
chemicals on it. I
then we
don't
would be
think birds
dropping
want
into
it.
double-digit
But you know
deaths
what?
by May 21st. Right,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
for you.
very, very good news. Also, when it comes to the resources that are used, same sort of deal. They've dramatically downgraded the number of beds that will be needed, the number of ICU beds that will be needed, the number of ventilators that will be needed.
Stop it.
Remember, they had been suggesting, I believe, 29,000 ventilators would be needed during peak resource use, which
Yes,
was 3
yes,
days,
it does.
April 11th. Right now, they are saying they will need 16,500 ventilators, right, which is a dramatic decrease, almost by 50%. And same thing with the number of total hospital beds. They dropped that to 140,000. Now it's down to 94,000. ICU beds, same sort of deal. They said that they would need, I think it was 50,000, something like that. ICU beds, they dropped that down to 19,000. So the models are continually being reduced. And that does suggest that there is some data that is entered into these models originally that is not right. Now, does that mean that it was wrong to lock down? No, it doesn't mean it was wrong to lock down. Right now, the question is going to be how we get out of this thing, which is much more important than was it wrong to lock down. I mean, in the presence of data that suggests the lockdown has been super successful, that doesn't mean the lockdown was unsuccessful. We'll get to more of this in just 1 second. First, let us talk about the underwear that Grace took us at this very moment. Over the next few weeks, you are going to be spending a lot of time lounging around. I know you're going to be spending a lot of time in the house, and you need a comfortable wardrobe, loungewear, underwear. These are going to be your very best friends, and this is why you need Tommy John, the revolutionary loungewear and underwear brand that is redefining comfort. They're offering you right now 20% off your first order. Treat yourself, upgrade to a few pairs of Tommy John underwear in the softest, most breathable fabrics you've ever worn. They have for men and women. My wife loves her Tommy John underwear. They really are fantastic. Tommy John obsesses over every little detail and stitch. They use proprietary fabrics that perform like nothing you've ever worn before. Their underwear comes with a no wedgie guarantee, which definitely would have helped me when I was younger. They've eliminated visible panty lines for women. Their quick dry flaw has been proven to save men over 217 minutes a year. I don't even know how they measure that, but apparently they've got this thing pegged down to the minute. Tommy John is so confident in their underwear. If you don't love your first pair, you can get a full refund with their best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee. Tommy John, no adjustment needed. Hurry on over to TommyJohn.com/Ben for 20% off your first order. That is TommyJohn.com/Ben for 20% off again. TommyJohn.com/Ben, the best underwear you will ever order, ever own. And you're not going to pay a fortune for them because you get 20% off when you use my promo code. That's TommyJohn.com/Ben. Okay, so meanwhile, we are now seeing another good news that we are not actually being overrun in mass terms. So one of the reasons to flatten the curve was to prevent us from being overrun, was to prevent the hospitals from being short on ventilators, rationing of ventilators, short on ICU beds, short on medical resources. And as it turns out, well, there have been hiccups in the process because distribution is never even or easy, right? If the federal government says we're going to hand you 1,000 ventilators, that doesn't mean they're going to go directly to the hospital department that is necessary over the course of the next 24 hours. I mean, as we have seen with virtually every government disaster response, there are just holdups in the distribution chains. This sort of stuff is very common, right? It's what you saw in Puerto Rico when FEMA was shipping bottles over there, bottles of water, and then 6 months later, with everybody not having water, on the tarmac, there are just millions of bottles of water. That sort of stuff does happen fairly frequently. With that said, the response of the federal government overall has been quite good. Here was Mike Pence yesterday listing all of the supplies that have been delivered.
The New York metro area, including New Jersey, just in the last 5 days, more than 6 million N95 masks, more than 6 million surgical masks, and 2.8 million gowns were distributed to that region as well. Going next to New Orleans, some 837,000 N95 masks for healthcare workers, 165 surgical masks, other items including almost 6 million gloves have been distributed. Just in the last 5 days, 1.6 million N95 masks have been routed into the healthcare system. In Detroit, nearly 700,000 surgical masks and 24 million gloves, just as a portion of what's displayed.
Guys, by the way, remember ventilators. It turns out that on Monday night, both Cuomo and Bill de Blasio claimed that the need had been met for ventilators in the state. So there's all this talk about ventilators and how we were going to be splitting ventilators and rationing ventilators. That may still happen in particular areas, if those areas see sudden spikes, for example, and they've not been distributed. But Gavin Newsom in California has announced that he's been working with state governments all over the place to purchase en masse ventilators. The United States government is supposed to be developing 100,000 ventilators. That's going to be way more than we need. Like way more than we need. That should go in the federal stockpile. That's a good thing, by the way. It's not a bad. Just like we have lots of nuclear weapons we never have to use. Better we should have too many ventilators on hand, and then we never have to use them. Then we have too few ventilators. With that said, all of the panic talk about how we were going to run short on ventilators, the government response was fairly decent here, and also, as it turns out, the estimates were way off for how many ventilators were actually necessary. Remember, Trump got ripped up and down when he suggested that when Cuomo said he needed 30,000 to 40,000 ventilators, he thought the numbers would be a lot lower than that. Turns out, the numbers were kind of a lot lower than that. So Trump may have been, engaging in evidence-free happy talk, but his actual guess was not wrong on that one. Meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo came out yesterday, the governor of New York. He said, we have not lost a single human being because of lack of care. So for all of the talk about shortages, we've responded such that people are not dying because they're not getting the care they need.
The question is, are you saving everyone you can save? And there the answer is yes, and I take some solace in that fact. Our healthcare system is operating. I don't believe we lost a single person because we couldn't provide care. People we lost, we couldn't save despite our best efforts.
Okay, so that is good news, is that we have not been overrun, right? Which was what I said yesterday. God willing, we have flattened the curve such that the healthcare system is not overrun. Now the question is, what comes next? And we're hearing a constant drumbeat out of the administration now that the numbers were way too high, right? Over the course of 2 weeks, the numbers were way too high in terms of what they thought was going to happen. Now, people who think the lockdowns need to be quasi-permanent policy, they're like, well, yeah, this is because of the lockdowns. People who are not pro that policy are like, well, did we go too far? The only way we're going to know that is with additional data. We're going to get to that in just 1 second. First, let us talk about the fact that you're spending an awful lot of time online right now. Hacking methods are growing super sophisticated. I'm sure everybody is working from home without your IT department to protect you from those online threats, and this is why you need a VPN. I've been using a VPN myself for 4 years. You should be using ExpressVPN because it is the best online protection possible. I've been talking about ExpressVPN on my show for a really long time. You know why you need to protect your computer, but ExpressVPN does it in a really great way. Not only do they protect all of your data so that they're not monetizing your data in some weird back-end way. Also, ExpressVPN is really fast, easy to use. It's not going to slow down your computer. One of the easiest ways to secure your internet data is with ExpressVPN. One click on your computer, smartphone, you are now protected. So the question is, why have you not done this yet, right? This is quick. This is easy. It's not going to cost you a fortune. Visit my special link right now at expressvpn.com/Ben. Get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Protect your internet today with the VPN I trust to keep my data safe. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. Again, that's expressvpn.com/Ben. When you use that /Ben, you get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Go check them out right now. So as I say, it is a drumbeat out of the administration now. The CDC's Robert Redfield, the head of the CDC, he says the coronavirus death toll is going to be a lot lower than we expected if we continue to socially distance.
The American public are taking the social distancing recommendations to heart. And I think that's the direct consequence why you're seeing the numbers are going to be much, 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 much lower
Hey, not only that, Dr. Fauci came out. He says by next week we're going to be looking at the downside of the slope. Here's Dr. Fauci yesterday.
As we get further on beyond this week, we should start to see the beginning of a turnaround, which is a good sign. So, it's very sobering to see the increase in deaths. And we predicted over the weekend that this would really be a bad week, and it is. It's going to be a bad week for deaths. But driving that and ahead of that is the fact that we're going to start to see the beginning of a turnaround. So we need to keep pushing on the mitigation strategies, because there's no doubt that that's having a positive impact on the dynamics of the outbreak.
Fauci also suggested one of the original models projected 100,000 to 200,000 deaths. As we are getting more data and seeing the positive effects of mitigation, those numbers are going to be downgraded. Right now, it's going to be a lot less than the original projection, which again is really good. It does raise the question of, I thought that your models originally took into account the fact that we were socially distancing. So that means another one of the other factors changed, right? Because if your model, right, if there's only X, Y, and Z. If X was the factor of social distancing, and if that remained constant, then the model could only have changed with Y or Z, transmission rate or death rate, right? I mean, those are the only factors in the model. There are not a lot of other factors in the model since everybody is staying home. Unless, presumably, for some reason you thought that the staying home was not going to mitigate this thing nearly as much, like you assumed that 50% of the population was going to stay home, and it turned out to be 100% of the population. But they've not really said that yet, and the UW model doesn't suggest that, University of Washington model. So exactly what comes next? How do we get out of this? Well, Rahm Emanuel's brother, Ezekiel Emanuel's brother. So Ezekiel Emanuel, who is a healthcare policy expert, one of the Obamacare minds, yesterday he gave his dark vision. He said there will be no religious services or dinner in restaurants for 12 to 18 months. Here he was yesterday basically saying we're going to have to continue to tamp down the economy until we find a vaccine, which could take upwards of a year.
Realistically, COVID-19 will be here for the next 18 months or more. We will not be able to return to normalcy until we find a vaccine or effective medications. If we prematurely end at physical distancing and the other measures, keeping it at bay, deaths could skyrocket into the hundreds of thousands, if not a million. We cannot return to normal until there's a vaccine. Conferences, concerts, sporting events, religious services, dinner in a restaurant, none of that will resume until we find a vaccine, a treatment, or a cure.
Okay, so it may be true that that is the case, but we're going to have to look at how other countries are handling this, and also we are going to have to get better statistics on how all of this works, because there are really three questions that need to be asked. First, what is the true coronavirus fatality rate? That question is really important because it determines whether certain areas ought to be open or closed, whether we ought to pursue, in Sweden style, a more liberalized society that presumes a very widespread. So, for example, if we have widespread already, and it is impossible to tamp it down such that we can actually socially trace and contact trace, well then, presumably we'd be better off just telling everybody who's most vulnerable, stay home, work from home, and telling everybody else, go out and get it, right? Give each other, right? That's kind of what Sweden is doing. And right now, I've been very, honestly, perturbed by the media coverage of what's happening in Sweden, because Sweden assumed that there would be an uptick in deaths before there was a downtick. I talked about this yesterday. The second wave is the question nobody's asking right now. Okay, so we flatten the curve, we get it underneath the medical necessities, right? Presumably, if there's a second wave, we're not going to max out our supply chains. Great. Now what? What happens when there's a second wave? So if all you've done by flattening the curve is avoided some of the hospital overruns, which is great, but then there's a second wave, and everybody's going to get it anyway. If the assumption is everybody's going to get it anyway, then you have to ask, okay, so how long are we holding this down here? When people look at Sweden and they say, well, they have a bigger first wave, the question is, okay, but the models don't end in August. I can cite that UW model until the cows come home, that IMHE model. That model ends August 4th. This thing ain't going to end August 4th. We've been told it's seasonal, which means it's coming back in the fall. So what exactly are we going to do when it comes back in the fall? Lock down again for another, entire winter? Lock down until the vaccine is found in presumably January or February at the very earliest, and then produced in March? We'll lock down all the way from September to March? Who thinks that's going to be a thing? We've already lost 30 million jobs. Who thinks that's going to be a thing? Okay, so we need to find out what the true coronavirus fatality rate is. Now, we've seen the case fatality rates, but those are not super accurate. Right? The reason that they're not super accurate is because the case fatality rates presume that we know how many people have been infected, which is not correct. We don't know how many people have been infected. We don't actually even know how many people are dead. Right? This is one of the problems. So right now, there's an argument going on as to whether the numerator and the fatality rate or both are flawed. We know for sure this is denominator. We know for sure there are lots more people who have coronavirus that have been tested for coronavirus and confirmed who have coronavirus. We know that for a fact. And as we'll discuss in a second, people are now developing tests, as they should be doing, in order to get to the point where we know the answer to that question. But as to that first question, it's now become a hot topic on Twitter, whether we're overcounting COVID deaths. The theory that we are overcounting COVID deaths is that if you die having COVID, that doesn't necessarily mean that you died from COVID. So if you're old and you're 85 and you get the flu, but you died from heart failure or something, does that mean that you died of the flu or with the flu? Now, is it true that we've maybe over broadly characterizing COVID deaths by some? I mean, it's possible. I mean, Dr. Birx did say yesterday that anyone who died with COVID is measured as a COVID victim. As we'll see in a second, it's also, I think, more significantly possible that we are undercounting COVID deaths at this point. But here is Dr. Birx talking about how we are categorizing COVID deaths.
There are other countries that if you had a pre-existing condition, and let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then